Hey everyone, this is Car RayRob,
Where I'm Ray.
and I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast. Say hello to my little film. Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film. That's right, everybody. We're back with another episode of Say Hello to My Little Film.
With this podcast, I'm going to try to introduce Rob to a movie he's never seen before that I love and see if I can get him to love it as much as I do.
Absolutely. We call that our fresh perspective on a retrospective review. And as Ray said, it's his episode.
Yeah, Rob, I feel like I've been a little heavy recently.
You have been.
The lives of others, secrets in their eyes, can kind of, even hoop dreams at times.
Sure.
I wanted to, I'm not usually that guy. I'm usually the more like fun movie
feel like I'm
guy.
playing in this. I feel like I'm playing in the sandbox. You're trying to make me like cry over here and
Yeah, so I'm gonna go a little looser, a little funner.
Okay.
I'm gonna do a bit of a buddy comedy movie for you this month.
A buddy comedy. All right. Well, Ray, I do love a good buddy comedy, so you got to tell me, what do you got? What do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
All right, Rob, what I have for you is the 2015 movie starring Robert Redford and Nick Nolte, A Walk in the Woods.
A Walk in the Woods. I think I am familiar with this movie, but I've definitely never seen it.
Yeah, it's Robert Redford plays this guy who's like he's just moved back to the United States. He's in his older years, and he kind of wants to reconnect with his homeland, and he wants to do this by hiking the Appalachian Trail.
As you do.
Yeah, it's a big investment.
investment.
But so he wants to do this with one of his best friends and just kind of experience stuff, reconnect stuff. But a lot of his friends are like, no. I don't want to do this. So as he goes down his friends list, he has to go pretty far down there to find Nick Nolte.
Who doesn't? You have to go real far down to find Nick Nolte. Real far down.
Nick Nolte says yes. So they go on. They start this adventure up the Appalachian Trail, and just moviness ensues. So it's just one of those kind of just fun buddy travel, buddy adventure movies. It's got a great little cast in it. Emma Thompson, Mary Steenburgen, Kristen Schaal.
Oh, Kristen Schaal.
I know you love Kristen Schaal. We all do. So, and it's really, I had a friend who I worked with who was obsessed with hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
And so,
did they ever do it?
So in this movie, the idea is that he's going to do the whole thing. It takes like 6 months to do the whole thing. A lot of like real life people, like they might go for 2 weeks, and then wherever they stop, like they'll do next year, they'll go back and they'll start at that point and do 2 more. So she was more of a sectioner, where she was doing it in sections and stuff.
But when you're old, it's like you got to do it or no.
You're running out of time. That's kind of where Robert Redford's at. So just like like I said, a little bit of a loosey goosey movie, but fun. Funny, has heart in it, so I'm excited to show it to you.
Well, I'm excited to watch a movie about two old guys walking the
We're
Appalachian
not that far
Trail.
away from maybe us thinking about having to do something like this.
No, don't. But I am interested to see how many hips are broken in this movie. But that's
What hint, maybe more than one.
Oh man, here we go. Well, with that said, this is the part of the podcast where we say you should pause the podcast and go, not walk the Appalachian Trail, because that might take you a long time, but watch A Walk in the Woods, and then come back, unpause the podcast, and see what I think about it.
Ray and Rob are currently watching The Film. You may be also watching The Film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching The Film. They'll be right back when they're done watching The Film.
All right, Ray, we're back from
hiking the Appalachian Trail. We actually did it in that short break.
No.
No? No,
No,
you're
I
right.
don't
No.
think we could.
No, I don't think so either. We definitely did not leave this room, and we hope nobody else did either.
Did this movie inspire you to want to walk the
You know,
Appalachian Trail?
that is an interesting question. I could consider it, but I would only do it if I'm 78 years old.
Yeah,
That's the
and
only way
you've
I'm
got to
gonna
have
do
like a
it.
club foot and be able to walk like Nick Nolte.
Or not walk. I don't know if
Yeah.
is walking what we're going to call that. We'll settle on walking.
My
I
gosh,
say.
it looks painful for Nick to do some of these scenes. You can definitely tell the use of some body doubles at times.
Yeah.
Because he just couldn't do it. But I guess it's kind of fitting because it's like, I guess Nick Nolte as the actor is literally like kind of in the exact situation that Steven, his character, is in, where he's like, I can't actually do this, but I'll keep trying, because Nick can barely like get through the scenes, but he keeps trying.
Yeah. No, I mean that's fair. Maybe it added something to the performance.
There's definitely some. I mean, he's huffing and puffing through some scenes, and I'm like, he's not acting. I don't think he can breathe.
I had to walk from the trailer to get here. You don't understand.
Well, can you imagine like some of these things, like when they're crossing the little river and they're like walking on these rocks, like barely able to keep their balance.
Yeah.
You had to do that multiple takes. Like, I don't know if Nick could have done them multiple takes. He looks just tough.
If I remember correctly, they've really focused in on the feet when they were.
Yeah.
So who knows if it was actually them? But I do think it was a
Couple
wide
wide
when.
shots,
I think it was
yeah.
a wide when they went into the water. So they just had to do that one dive in.
Yeah.
But even that,
You better get it right, or you're doing it again.
Yeah, for sure. But okay. So let's start down the trail of this conversation.
Okay.
How about that? We usually start out with some kind of a question.
We do, and I have one.
Okay,
for
good,
you.
because I don't. I was getting ready to say I don't, but okay. So what do you got? Hit me.
I think in as succinctly as possible. Obviously, we'll expand on this thought, because I think the movie's expanding on this thought. But the question I was going to pose to you, speaking of the trail, is: did they fail? Did they fail on their quest to hike the Appalachian Trail?
They didn't make it to the end.
They
You watched the end of the movie, right?
Yeah,
You were with
multiple
okay.
times.
Oh.
They didn't get to Maine. They didn't get to Maine, but we'll maybe we can discuss a little bit more, because Nick Nolte says, "We did. I hiked the Appalachian Trail."
Right.
So
He made a lot of excuses.
but maybe we'll talk more. We'll see if we lean maybe more on Robert Redford's
Okay.
original side, or
Sure.
if we lean on Nick Nolte's side by the end of the
okay.
combo.
Okay, all right. Well, their motivations. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, I think their motivations are pretty interesting. But I guess the setup, first of all, why won't Robert Redford, who plays Bill Bryson?
Mm-hmm.
I always call him Bill, but in the movie I noticed more and
Steven.
more. Steven is Nick Nolte's character, and then Robert Redford is Bill Bryson.
Oh, that's right. Stephen Katz.
Stephen
and Bill
Katz
Bryson.
and Bill
There
Bryson.
we go.
They call each other by each other's last
There's
names.
just a couple of old dudes. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
But first of all, like, what is Robert Redford's deal? Like, he won't stay home. He's always got to travel. He's got a gorgeous wife.
I was gonna say, if you want to talk about failure, the one thing he's not a failure in is his wife, because Emma Thompson is a treasure
Of course.
in everything, and she is. I mean, come on, what is that age gap? I'll look it up. I'm gonna look it up right now.
It
I'm
is
gonna look it up right
large.
now. Hold on, 22 years.
Well, there you go.
I mean, I guess it could be worse, and it seemed worse on film. I'm not gonna lie. Actually,
Yeah.
22 years seems closer than I expected.
Yeah, they both look there. She looks like she's in her 60s, maybe at the time of filming, in
Probably
her 50s.
in her 50s. I was gonna say,
And he
50s.
looked like he was in his late
She's in her mid 60s
70s,
now. Yeah.
Hey, to each his own. Emma found something she loved in Robert
I
Redford.
mean, it is Robert Redford, so I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on that one. But it just, when I first saw it, I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I think his character is interesting at the start of this movie, because it's like, why do you want to just always go somewhere? Like, he's a travel writer,
Yeah.
which, I think that because of your nature, you kind of lean to always be traveling, always be moving. But, it takes him away from his family. And as soon as he gets home, he's almost like somewhat retired.
Right.
And he's like, I'm having a midlife crisis, end of life.
I'm about to say,
crisis.
do not call that a midlife crisis. Do not do
End
that.
of life. Who knows?
End of life crisis.
Robert Redford could live to be 150. God bless his soul. We don't know. But yeah, so he's going through some end of life crisis. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go hike for 5 months. See ya. And his wife's like, okay. Yeah, I mean, she didn't want him to die, but she wasn't like, you can't
She
Like-
was not supportive in any way.
Well, only because she thought he couldn't do it, not because like
Sure.
the time he was going to be gone. At least that's the perspective I think they showed for her. They're
Yeah.
like, you're going to die out there. You
Well,
can't
yeah.
go alone. You can
Yeah.
go, but you can't go alone.
Right, you're literally gonna die because you're really old, and that is
Yeah.
not gonna work.
But I was like,
And
you're
all
cool with him
the-
just disappearing for 5 months? Okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
But I guess
but
it's-
that
yeah.
when you're that old and your kids are gone and all
He's
that.
78. He could have died of natural causes between now and 5 months.
That's true.
But yeah, anyway, so we'll maybe kind of talk more about Robert Redford's perspective. I think on what drives his character
Yeah,
as we go through this. But this is how we eventually meet up with Nick Nolte in the movie because Bill Bryson can't go on this hiking trip alone. He has to find a partner, and he doesn't.
right. Yeah, I mean, as you would imagine, especially of friends of his age, I'm sure they're like, "You're nuts, no." So nobody's gonna do this
They're like,
with him.
why don't you call me back when you have a good idea?
Right? And it's like, I think you've had identity theft. I got a crazy phone call.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
so Nick
it's him.
Nolte calls him out of the blue and was
Yeah.
not asked, which
No.
is something that is broached at one point in this movie, and I do think is an interesting kind of little tidbit. It's like he didn't actually want Stephen Katz to go with him, but Stephen Katz is like, "Oh, I want to go, so I'm gonna call him and find out."
Out of necessity,
Yeah,
he
right.
says yes.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, he can't go. So he's got two old men are now deciding to grumpy old men. Two grumpy old men. Are
That
deciding to go to-
movie title's already been used, so
Sure.
we couldn't use that.
Grumpy old men on the trail decide that they are going to the Appalachian Trail. But I thought the preparing to go was kind of an interesting journey because it's funny how he is a travel writer and clearly has been traveling his entire life.
for
Just
multiple
books, yeah. And he just seems to be so out of his element when he goes to the store to
Yeah.
buy equipment to go traveling.
Yeah,
That
out of
felt
touch
ve-
with what things actually cost.
Yeah. So I'm like, are you
yeah.
a travel guy or do you just like know how hotels work
Right.
around the world? You know?
Well, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to like price shame anybody, but like he lives in a multi-million-dollar house. Their house is. It's like, all right, I'm not paying $250 for a backpack. Like, all right, I can complain about paying $250 for a backpack, but you can't. I'm sorry, but don't need to necessarily go there. But yeah, you're right. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised at all this stuff I need. What do you mean I can't get a waterproof bag or
Right.
whatever?
What do you mean rain? What do you mean rain? There's gonna be rain on the trail? What are you talking about? I need to be protected from the rain.
Yeah.
But at least we got Nick Offerman out of it.
We
I'll
did.
say at least we got Nick Offerman out of it, which
It was
was
very-
always great.
Very snide roll. One
Right.
of those deals like, yeah, you're gonna need this product. It's
You're gonna need
just
this
making you feel dumb.
poop shovel. Here's
Yeah.
your poop shovel.
Yeah, bury your poop.
Yeah, and so that was a little weird. I'm just like, again, it kind of put an interesting vibe in my mind about, like you said, Robert Redford's character, where it just feels like yeah, you're a travel writer, but
Yeah.
you don't seem very much like a traveler in that regard. Like you said, just like how to check in and out of hotels
Yeah.
around the world.
Well, let's expand that then, because that's kind of one of my main things that obviously I've admittedly loved this movie, but sometimes I find Bill Bryson, Robert Redford's character, to be really annoying and confusing a little bit. Where it's
Sure.
like, I'm like, what are your motivations? Like, you're trying to, you're doing this thing that's taking away from your wife for a really long time. You're totally cool with it. You complain a little bit. You're very kind of like persnickety to your friends. Like, what did your deal with Bill? Did you like Bill? Is he hard to figure out for you?
I mean, okay, so full disclosure, yeah, I think I did have a lot of issues. To be honest, sure. Well, we can put it on the Bill Bryson character, but maybe both in a way. But I think Bill Bryson did kind of personify it a little bit more, where it's like I feel like this is a very common thing that's happening right now, sociopolitically, if you will, where it's like this group of men are having a really hard time coming to grips with the idea that they're gonna die.
Right.
And like, so it's like they feel like they have to prove something, and they have to be cranky and rage against everything, and just like they cannot even fathom that this was ever going to, it's like they could never fathom that this was going to
News to
happen
them.
until right now.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Like, I'm gonna die someday? Yeah, man, I hate to break it to you, but it's gonna happen. And so and especially for a guy that, as we said, feels like he has a bit of a privileged life.
For sure.
You know, written multiple books, like you said, he traveled around the world many times, questionably not in a non-luxurious way.
Yeah.
And even when Stephen Katz kind of gets into the mix and they start talking about the old days, it's like, oh, you remember when you used to chase women around and like all of these things, and and yeah, I mean, it's, it can be somewhat entertaining, in those instances, so when Stephen Katz is like telling the stories to Bill Bryson's family, and he's like, oh, don't, I don't want to know
reveal
about
my
that.
origin story.
Right, that kind of thing. So it can be difficult to kind of maybe to rally behind a character like that you feel like their motivations feel almost whiny.
Yeah. And I do think part of an arc is you got to start somebody in a position where you don't always support where they start, and then the goal of the movie is, can you get them somewhere where you like to finish?
Sure, right.
I don't necessarily feel like, I totally agree with that about Bill. I don't think I necessarily feel that about Steven, because I don't feel like that's his motivation. Like, I don't think he's doing this because he's realized he's going to die or having this end of life crisis per se. I think it's more about he's what he's lost touch of, and like
Sure.
circling back, like maybe realizing too little too late some of the things he's lost a hold of or haven't put enough priority to.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel more genuine with what he's trying to get out of this trip.
No, and I can agree with that. And I think some of the things that he's grappling with do feel more real. He's kind of talked about the alcoholism. I think was one of the more interesting threads through the movie. That you see him hide the bottle in the bag, like in the beginning, and then that obviously comes back around much later in the movie. They're sitting, in the woods, and he's like, "Oh, you're not I know you've got that bottle," and he's like trying to, like, you're still an alcoholic or whatever, and
right.
then, he goes through the whole spiel about how much he loves drinking, and that scene was really good, in my opinion, where he ends up ultimately pouring the bottle out, like, or do you think I'm the man who can never take a drink again for the rest of his life? Yeah, Stephen Katz asked Bill, like, do you think I'm the man who can never take a drink again for the rest of his life?
Yeah.
And in that moment, he says, yes, I do think that, and he pours out the bottle, and that makes the joke about almost regretting it immediately, but still, like, it's, I do think that's one of the better scenes of the movie, and I do think that has largely to do with the Stephen Katz character.
Yeah, I think I watched the scene, I'm like, is this Stephen Katz talking, or is this Nick Nolte just talking?
Right.
I could see it again. Stephen Katz.
I mean, that's fair.
Seems like he's pretty realistically connected to Nick Nolte, but I think that's a moment for Bill too, because Bill is just like very like unemotional, like unapproachable, like isn't quick to give out a compliment kind of guy. And I when he looks into Steven's eyes and says, yes, I think you can do it, I think that's as much like real connection you can get from Bill. So I kind of feel like it's good for both. And but then of course they comment, it's like, wow, this is a lot of drama. I'm like, well, don't pat yourself on the back, writer of the movie.
Sure.
But yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes. And I think just kind of continue to think about their motivations and the perspective. I think they have a couple other decent little quick combos, like when Bill's talking about the rock, and he sees all three different types of the rock, or and then Steven's like, it's all rock to me. I think it's a good way of contrasting them. And then again, the conversation, not again, but I know another example would be that conversation they have about the American chestnut. I kind of find interesting how that tree was there for like 50 years, and a fungus happens, and now there's no more American chestnuts. Like, they're extinct, I guess.
Sure.
Should we call trees extinct? Is that just animals?
Yeah, no.
But yeah, so I kind of think you can see that's, again, like kind of you brought it together. That's Bill with that realization, like, I'm gonna be extinct soon.
Right.
Like sooner than later that'll be me. And
Sure.
I was here, and now I won't be. And
Right.
that's one thing, like, in movies I don't really connect with like as much, and maybe it's just because I'm a loser, but like legacy isn't like something that's super important to me. So like when it's like when a character's sole purpose revolves around like, what legacy are you leaving on this earth? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think about life like that. So I don't really connect overly to those kind of arcs.
I get that. You don't expect that
We're one
somebody's
of
going to
6
dig up
billion.
these shows in like 1,000 years.
I mean, I
listen
don't
to us
care
and be
if
like,
they do.
oh man,
I don't
we're
care
writing
if they
a new
do
Bible.
that.
That's
Yeah.
actually what we're doing. We're writing a new Bible right now. In 2,000 years, somebody's going to dig up these recordings and like, oh, the gospel according to Ray and Rob.
I would love to see those movies they watched. But yeah.
No, I get that, and I do feel like, as I was kind of talking a little bit earlier about Bill's start, I do think there are glimmers of it, through the movie where he do feel like he kind of breaks out of that. The whole thing is being from Iowa.
Right.
He always is like, oh, well, I used to live in England for like a decade, and
Yeah.
then I lived, and
I
then we
live in
moved back here
Massachusetts now.
for 20 years. I was like, I just moved back 20 years ago. Like, good, what? So, like, some of that stuff was weird, but, then,
Well, I don't think he's home a lot, so I think that's another part.
right.
Because he travels
I
and writes.
really hate my home life.
So I think to him, it's like, I moved here 20 years ago, but I've only lived there like 3 or 4 because I'm always gone.
Right. But, by the end of the movie, when they ask where they're from, I think it's after they get back from the trail or whatever, or after they've left the trail, and like, where you're from, like, oh, we're from Iowa, or whatever.
Right.
And so, I can see that being that, glimmer of growth for the Bill Bryson character by the end.
Well, and just him willing to go with not having to get to the end of it, to the end of the trail to go
Right.
home was, him be able to like just like throw in the towel.
Sure.
In a way, he got his fill.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that more. But yeah, there's another growth moment there. But yeah.
Yeah, and kind of going back to our central question, I do think as far as their success, even in their mind compared to the viewer, a lot of it revolves around, at least for them. I feel like this is the argument that Stephen Katz makes, like, oh, we traversed it in the heat, we did it in the snow,
Yeah.
we did it in this. So it's like it's about what they experienced on the trail. And I do feel like, there are moments on the trail when there are things that feel like fleshed out and good. And then there are other things that I feel like they start and then do nothing with.
Well, you must be talking about Mary Steenburgen
Well, that is definitely one of them. But the two ladies, Kristen Schaal, who is hilarious, and for the few minutes that she's in the movie, and then she's just gone.
Yeah, they ditch her.
And then and then Mary Steenburgen, which, we kind of go back to, why is Bill Bryson doing this? He has Emma Thompson at home, and don't get me wrong, Mary Steenburgen is also a treasure. In fact, I would put Mary Steenburgen, if there was a top 10 most underrated actresses maybe ever, she would probably be somewhere on that list for me.
She's great.
I love Mary Steenburgen. But you're like, okay, what's going on? Like, why is this like, oh, I'm attracted to this lady for this like 5 seconds for some reason? And it's like, well, why? That doesn't seem like you're home. You don't like your wife. It didn't seem like that at the beginning. It's not like you're having problems at home. Like, what? Why all of a sudden is like Mary Steenburgen, part of this equation in that way?
Yeah, I don't really know what the movie wants to do there. I don't know if it's just like it's reminding him of what he's missing back home. Like, to do this kind of like unneeded adventure.
Yeah.
So it's reminding him of what he's missing, and he admits he's never cheated on his wife before and never will.
Right.
Like, he'll look, but I guess he's not gonna take it further than that. But yeah, I do think it's a little muddy.
Yeah.
About that. But now this is based off a book. Like, the real Bill Bryson wrote this book, and maybe that actually happened. But
he's not writing a book. He said it multiple times. He's not. You mean you're not going to write the book after we've said it 4 times?
When you say things 3. That's the rule of 3 in movies.
Right.
If it's said 3 times, it's going to happen. But
Right.
It's like saying the thing. I don't know.
Right.
Rubbing a lamp. I don't know. Anyway,
was this Beetlejuice?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Saying Beetlejuice.
It.
Yes, thank you, Rob. You're supposed to read my mind quicker than that. But whatever. But so let me just ask, so let's just break down like perspective or motivation. Like, why do you think? I want to think about Stephen and Bill, but like, what do you think Bryson is really getting out of it? Like, why did he want to do this? What is he trying to find?
I think he wants to prove to himself that he can do it, that he's not an old man.
Decrepit.
Yeah, that he's not an old man. And I mean, I get it. Like, I think you could possibly believe that he is looking for some kind of adventure, if you will. But
to what end?
Right, but to what end? In my mind,
go to the bowling alley.
It's like I'm not. It's raging against the dying of the light. Like, that's what Bill Bryson is doing in this movie. Is he's raging against the dying of the light, and
we will not go quietly into that dark night.
Right, exactly, and So he, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna hike this trail, now at 78 or whatever
Yeah.
he's at, and
Or 78 in real life. He's
Right.
probably playing. He thinks he's playing a 62-year-old, probably.
Is that what?
No,
oh,
no. I'm just saying, Robert
I
probably.
was
I
gonna
could
say-
pull off 62.
I'm
but no.
gonna, I don't know if they ever actually say his age.
I don't think they do.
Because man, if you're trying to tell me that they were trying to play Robert Redford as a guy in his 60s,
I don't think so. I don't
swear
think so.
you're smoking crack. But it's still, I don't know. Like I
Well,
said,
And put into words what you think Steven's motivation is.
I mean, honestly, I think Steven's looking for a connection with another person.
Yeah,
I
a real
think that's
one.
a real
Yeah,
person. And
rekindle. So
right.
he's trying to rekindle an old one.
yeah, and so even though he wasn't the one being reached out to, he was the one who did the calling. He realized, like, just like Bill, like, I'm not going to be around much longer, and this was a person that I did enjoy being around.
Yeah.
I know at one point Bill in the beginning of the movie when he was talking to Emma Thompson about Steven, it was like, or she was like, well, didn't you guys hate each other after that trip? And he's like, no, we started out getting on each other's nerves. We ended up despising each other.
Right.
And, like, I actually wonder if that is how Steven views it. And they never
Yeah.
really say one way or the
Yeah,
other.
that's one note I have too. That I wish they explored the friendship a bit more. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of like fun banter, like funny lines between
Yeah.
the two, but like not like I'd like to explore that depth more because like I do wonder, like, did they like each other? Like, did they have a falling out because they simply lost touch, or was this more purposeful on Bill's part to not reach out to Steven? Like, it's
I agree.
muddy.
Yeah,
it's muddy.
I agree. I feel like their relationship overall, while on surface level feels like fulfilling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because where it starts and where it ends up, I agree. I think their history feels very
Explored.
unexplored, and it's just like you have to kind of take it at face value because you're right. I mean, everything they said, in the stories I mentioned earlier, it seemed like they were having a good time.
Sure.
It didn't seem like they were, nothing. And they never say like, oh well, this happened in Italy in this year,
No.
and this is
Yeah,
what made us stop talking to each other.
The only thing I think they
whatever.
mention is like, they say Bill. I think Steven tells Bill, like, you went to England. I thought you were going to last one day and come back. And he's like, well, I lived there for 10 years. And it's just like he just never came back.
Right.
But there's
Okay.
not enough. Like, give me
Yeah.
more. Like, but why did you lose touch? And
Right.
Did you really despise each other, or were you being quippy? Like, just what's
Right.
the deal?
Yeah, and I agree, and like I said, I think that there's, as they're going through the trail, and their relationship is, blossoming, reblossoming, whatever, I do think that there, are a series of funny situations,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, a lot of funny lines and stuff, and their chemistry is good.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
there's
really
no-
like Nick Nolte in this.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think Robert Redford and Nick Nolte have good chemistry off each other. One, because Robert Redford is, Robert Redford
Yeah.
is like,
They
this-
are like they're
pinnacle of
polar
acting.
opposites in real life, you would think.
Right, 100%. So it does kind of play. I mentioned Grumpy Old Men earlier.
Yeah.
Grumpy Old Men. It's like that. It's Mathau and
Lemons.
Lemon and Jack Lemmon all
Jack
over
Lemmon.
again. Yeah, and so in that regard it works because it's a natural formula.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like on paper it totally makes sense, but I still feel like even with that, like you said, there was something missing in that regard. And I don't know if I think you're right. I think it's that if they had just filled out the younger years a little bit more,
Yeah.
that some of that stuff would have maybe been a bit more impactful.
Yeah, I think when you watch their friendship get fixed, it's good to know how broken it was so we know how fixed it's becoming. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, if it's like, yeah, we love each other, we just simply lost touch. I'm like, well, that's not a very necessarily rewarding arc to go on,
Yeah.
per se. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's a lot of, I do feel like a lot of the gags, a lot of the jokes do hinge on we're old and they're young and I hate them because of that. You know what I mean? Like, there's the young guys that want to help carry their
Yeah.
packs across the rocks, like, oh, I hate those f***ers, or
Yeah.
whatever. And then like,
but then they do fall into the river and they pay the consequence
right,
for it.
and they do exactly. And then and that stubbornness. And now, granted, in the end, they are the guys that come back,
Right.
and help them off the ledge, which I think it's funny they went back with them. I guess for the line it makes sense because like I love those guys,
Right.
like
Yeah.
or whatever.
It's called a callback.
Right, exactly. But in the same instance, I was really expecting Kristen Schaal to come back and
She
save
wouldn't be able
her.
to save him.
She totally would have.
Yeah.
No, do not count Louise out. Louise Belcher can do anything.
Sure.
Real quick though, this is completely side note, but since we brought Kristen Schaal back up again, it is very interesting how many movies we've watched in this podcast that have a Lord of the Rings scene in it.
I wrote that down.
like how many movies are gonna do this gag?
I know. I was wishing like Steven was going to look over Bill and lift, because we're talking about Hunt for the
Wilder
People. Yeah.
Wilder People.
Yeah, where they were like, I was
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was like, he was mouthing. He's like, this is like that scene in Lord of the Rings. And I was hoping Steven was going to do that to Bill.
But how many?
As many as we can, Rob. As many as we can.
Apparently so.
We need to find more.
Yeah. But and I, like I said, it's they kind of.
That was when they were ditching Kristen Schaal.
Right.
Because she was very annoying.
I mean, and she was, and it's funny because it does. Maybe you're kind of talking about you mentioned earlier, like the real guy wrote the book, and like so maybe some of these things are more fleshed out in the book, and they're just kind of like picking out moments. But that's what it feels like. So it's like when they get to that bunkhouse,
yeah,
and they meet the other guy who's like all nerdy about packs,
right,
and like Robert Redford's like, oh, I just thought it was better than carrying everything in my arms.
Right.
Well, it's a great line, but then like the guy's just like gone, and it's like okay, like
he's rude, so he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna talk to you.
Yeah,
anymore.
well, it's just like it's like again, it's like these little quips, these little like gags that it's like okay, yeah, maybe I did really like hike this trail, and I met this person or that person or whatever, and it's like you just kind of get a whiff of it, not anything more than that.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the side things that the movie is doing is just trying to give you a taste of like, hey, if you want to go hike the trail, you're gonna get like bits and pieces of this. You're gonna get to a campsite one night and there's gonna be 2 other people there. Maybe you'll like them and maybe you won't. Maybe you'll spend a couple of days with them and maybe you'll be like, yeah, we're gonna go our separate ways here, and you're gonna be frustrated and tired and not want to chit chat when somebody's gonna want to chit chat. So it's like I think it's like just giving those bits and pieces, those tastes of what it might be like out there.
Yeah.
Because I do, I think the movie's trying to fulfill that purpose. And I kind of like one of the things that I guess I really do like about this movie is like I like that it's like I don't know about if it's mood or tone, but I like that it's like slower paced and chillaxed. Like sometimes you want a movie that's a thriller, like last month when I did The Lives of Others, and sometimes you want an action movie, and sometimes like I'll watch a Marvel movie for the 20th time, but like sometimes I just want this nice and chill, like just 2 people walking around, like nice and slow pace. I appreciate that about it.
Sure, no, I mean, and I can understand that, and like I said, the gags are good. Like most of them, they work. Like I said, even that one that I just mentioned, like I mean, those things do work.
It's a funny line.
It's a funny line. Like I said, it's a funny moment, and it's like you're stringing together funny moments, and then you've got this the story.
Yeah.
That's going on, above it. That's
Right.
really supposed to be like the that's the the bedrock, if
Yeah.
you will, or below it, I should say. That's the bedrock, and I do sometimes wish those things informed the other more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I think you could start off with Robert Redford being this character that's always persnickety to people and elitist a little bit to people, and he doesn't really try to connect with people on a real deep level. And then by the end of the movie, you see that change, and he worries about other people other than just himself, or he gives people the time of day and doesn't just brush them off. Yeah, I think that would be really good character development stuff.
Yeah.
And then you could still have those could still be moments, but they're serving a bigger purpose. Where
Right.
you don't really get that much development from Bill in that way.
Sure. And I think, they do have those, moments of depth. I mean, they absolutely do, especially towards the end, as you would expect, as they're kind of coming to their self-realizations and, that kind of stuff, fulfilling their weaknesses, needs, and all that good, writer stuff, and,
Yeah.
they apologize for losing touch, they have some really great scenes. We mentioned the one about the alcoholism earlier, which was good. And even when they get stuck on the ledge, they're talking about the stars, and it's like, oh, there's more galaxies in the universe than grains of sand on the
Right.
Earth, and we're just so small and all of it, and it's like,
Yeah.
and that's great, as far as like a self-revelation kind of situation, where you start looking at yourself. So that is good, especially compared to how I see Bill in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is good, to kind of realize, like, as big as we believe we are. We are main characters. We have the main character syndrome,
Right.
where everything revolves around us, and it really doesn't.
No,
And
very little.
very little of it does. Very minute kind of stuff. But, it's, again, like, I don't know if, if everything kind of jived in that way, like, by the end.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about our ultimate question then. I think we're dancing all around it.
Sure.
And I guess we're going to talk about what they really needed to get out of this in terms of success and failure. But we know they didn't reach the finish line. They did not
They did
start in
not.
Georgia and get to Maine.
They did not.
I don't think even got halfway. They hiked for about a month.
I think
maybe
they got
a
a
month and
little.
week.
Yeah, they probably got about halfway.
Yeah. So I think they said, it's
Somewhere
a couple
maybe in
months, I would
Virginia
think.
or something like
Yeah.
that. Is where I
Getting
remember they
close.
got to
This
that
can't
point
be
where
the scale.
Right.
says
When they get
to
to the map,
scale.
like, yeah, this is the scale. It says literally says the map is the scale.
Yeah, but did they fail? So this is the conversation. They've quit. They're going back home. They're in the back of somebody's car, and Bill says, I think he says, hey, we what does he say? I wrote it down. He says we weren't even close. We
Right.
failed. We weren't even close. And that's when Steve says, what do you mean? We did it.
We hiked the Appalachian Trail, Bryson.
Yeah, in the rain, in the sun, in the cold.
Rain, the
We
snow,
hiked
all
it.
that, yeah.
But so did I guess who's more right, Bill or Steven? Did they fail or not?
I mean, I think ultimately, as far as what they were looking for, obviously they didn't hike the whole trail. So no, in that regard, they
Quite
did not.
literally, they failed.
They did it was an admirable job, for men of their age, and
Really, for anybody.
for anybody, for sure, but especially for men of their age, they did a very admirable job of getting as far through as they could, and definitely enough to call it good. As far as their overall life lessons, I guess, I mean, I think, maybe
You guess
maybe
they failed, or
Steven-
you guess they didn't?
I guess they didn't fail. I mean, I guess. I think Steven probably more successful than Bill in my
Yeah.
mind. Like, I feel Steven, like, he got the reconnection that he was looking for in this journey, and I think that was good, and I think
And he's kind of come to grips with, like, he could go to jail and be fine.
Right.
Like, he doesn't need to run away from his past.
right. And Bill got another book, so I guess that's good.
And made more money.
And made more money, so I guess that's good. But so I guess for me, did they? Yes and no. I mean, I'm gonna say, for the sake of not playing it safe, I'm gonna say no. I think Steven, yes, Bill, no, but obviously they didn't finish the trail, so no.
Yeah. I think if you take it even beyond Bill and Steven and think about you want to when you set off on these goals in your life, just anybody, how do you judge success? And I think success doesn't have to be getting to the finish line. You know what I mean? So,
Sure. Oh yeah, no,
you know,
absolutely. No,
yeah.
That's fair. That's
and
fair.
so I think that's why I probably agree with you. I think Steven got more out of it because I think that's that's what that's kind of what this movie is about. It's kind of really what I think what most people's philosophy should be about life is it's just the journey. Like, don't look at it, judge it every individual day, or don't just judge it by successes and failures. Just take the journey as a whole, the big picture. Be nice to as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Help as many people as you can.
Sure.
So I think in that way, Steven was successful. I mean, he helped that girl get her panties out of the washing machine.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, again, funny moment, like funny sequence, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna say this, and this was something that kind of stuck out to me a couple times. Is, man, and this is again, it's kind of par for the course with men of this age. Like, it's like this innate, ingrained misogyny here. It's like
I disagree. She
no.
approached him.
No, I mean, yes, but okay. So they make fun of her for being fat later, like after he leaves.
Sure.
But like basically, he'd still have sex with her. Like,
He's still
she's
attracted to her.
fat, but fine, I'll do it. Like, it's fine. I have to lower my standards because he's definitely a catch at this point. He's lowering her. Maybe she's lowering her
barely
standard.
walk.
He can barely walk.
I think we see her husband. I think she is lowering her standards.
I agree. And then like there was a line later. I actually wrote it down. It's like and they were talking about a girl that they, knew back when they were young, and
Yeah.
like they were talking about how great her boobs were, and then like you remember her sister? Oh yeah, like, and the line was, if you're going to be ugly, you better be funny. If you're not funny, you better have money. If you're 0 for 3, you better be slutty.
And
she
she
was
was.
definitely slutty, and I'm just like, oh boy, like.
Well, I think people can joke amongst each other and not necessarily always think it's true.
Sure, they didn't think it was true.
Well, Bill experienced
I was
it.
gonna say, I think they know that for a fact that it was, but then they fell on the ledge, and you're like,
Exactly. They always kind of, every time they took it too far, took their jokes too far, it did come around and bite them in the butt, though.
Yeah.
So it's like when they were, making fun of the girl for being too chunky, her husband came with a gun to kill him, and they had
Sure.
to escape out the back of the window.
Sure.
When they were making fun of that slutty girl, they fell off the cliff, and they were
Right.
making talking about the one guy's moms when they fell into the river. Like every time
yeah?
they do something, they take their jokes too far. Karma had a way of getting even
That
with
is true.
them.
That's a good point. That is a good point. But but it's hard, so it's hard, with a movie like this, there's a lot of movies like this, to be fair, like that are end of life crisis movies, and it's sometimes, we're neither one of us are in that position.
Right.
So, we kind of talk about perspective, and like, can movies make you really see somebody else's perspective? So, what do you think? Do you think
Yeah.
like a movie like this, like, helps you see their perspective, see their point of view? Does it make you feel for them?
I think I don't like, for me, what I see that it like, I don't necessarily as an old, like, have to, like, this movie has to be an old person problem. I could see this movie being poignant for people our age, like going through a midlife crisis. I think it's like anybody in crisis, like you're escaping your life, you're going on this trail to find something that you don't really need. Like, Bill doesn't need to get to the finish line of this Appalachian Trail. Like, him getting to the end isn't really going to prove anything to himself. It'll just
Sure.
be another thing to prove. So, like, for me, I think movies can put me in this, like, where I can project their issue onto myself, or adapt their issue to an issue that I could experience. So I do think, like, it lends me to, like, being able to, like, project those perspectives and kind of, look at life through a different lens, or somebody else's lens, in that way. And sure, I know I'm going to die someday, but I'm sure when I get close to it, I'm not going to love the prospect of it. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So, I guess that's where I would fall in it. What do you think?
I mean, I can agree. I am definitely of the mind that movies can make you see other
Yeah.
people's perspective. I definitely am a believer in that. But and sometimes some movies are better than others at doing
Sure.
it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I can see elements, and I guess again it would be a case by case basis about whether I see their weakness and need, and I can relate to it.
Mhm. Yeah.
What I can take from it. So again, it's a case by case basis.
All right. Well, I think we've milked this dry. We've talked about this movie for, almost the length of what the real movie is. No, not quite.
Not
but
quite that long. As long as it takes to walk the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, to walk a portion of it, for sure. But anyway, so let's ask the ultimate question. Rob, did you like this movie, and would you recommend it?
Huh. The ultimate question.
The ultimate question of this podcast.
The end of podcast crisis question,
Yes.
if you will. So did I like A Walk in the Woods? So like I said, I think there are elements of this movie that I really do like. I do think the chemistry between Robert Redford and Nick Nolte is good. I think their funny moments are funny. I think that what on paper this works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
The
getting across
banter.
what they want,
Yeah.
what they want to get across. But do I feel like it works on all levels? No. So if I not to play it safe, as we try not to do
No.
here, I'm gonna say no. I actually did not really like A Walk in the Woods. I think I think I can appreciate like I said, there are various elements of it I can appreciate. I think there are various beats in the movie that I can appreciate. And I feel like if I, again, look at it as the whole, those dots are there.
Mm-hmm.
But do I feel like they were well executed and you know, ring true for what I believe they really thought they were saying? No. And I do think part of that, it goes back to that perspective question, you know, where I said it was kind of a case by case basis. And I do think that there are movies like this that really do draw you in and help you to understand the people that are kind of going through these situations, these kind of end of life crises, if you will. And, you know, you can relate to that. You can see yourself in the future. And like you said, maybe even see yourself now.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if this movie did it. And it could go really back to the Bill Bryson character. I don't think he really like got anywhere by the end.
Yeah.
Truly. I think, you know, again, he went home and he just wrote another book. It's like,
Right.
okay, like that's fine. It's like, so he's going to make another bundle of money off of his name again, writing another book, you know.
But he won't have to travel and leave.
Right. And he
Maybe?
won't, maybe. But like, you know, so I think, you know, as I kind of alluded to earlier in the episode, it's kind of, we get to a point where sometimes stories like this can feel whiny. And I do feel like there's a little bit of that in here. And I do think, you know, I can get past it to a certain degree at certain times because the jokes are good.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to those times when it's like, what are you doing? Like with Mary Steenburgen. Like,
Right.
it was like, why is this even here? And I think those kinds of things kind of make the movie stumble. And you kind of, because it almost makes Robert Redford seem even more shallow at that
Mhm.
point. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, you've got Emma Thompson at home. You know, you've got nothing to complain about. Your marriage is fine. You're not doing whatever. Like, and now here you are, like, having this weird mental fling in your mind with Mary Steenburgen. Like, it felt weird. So I will say the unsung hero is Nick Nolte
Sure.
in this movie. I think if there is a shining light in this movie, it is Nick Nolte, and I do think he kind of, I'm going to say it, I think he carries the movie in a lot of ways.
Oh, he barely can walk and
And he
barely
can barely
carry his backpack.
Right, he barely carry his backpack, but he carried this movie, so I'm going to say that. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to say no, Ray. I did not
That-
enjoy this movie, and I could probably recommend different variations on this movie that I think other people might, you know, that for
Yeah.
me.
That, and that's totally okay. That's what we do this
That's what
podcast
we
for.
do this podcast for.
Well, Rob, before we walk ourselves out of this conversation, I know that you've been watching some other things, some non-assigned things. What have you checked out recently?
Yeah, I've actually got a few things to talk about. So, number one, I watched Novocaine.
Oh, I
with
forgot
Jack
that was out.
Quaid. Yeah, Jack Quaid is just kind of popping up everywhere. He's just
Yeah.
becoming that guy, and I like him, so it's good. But you know, the movie's about like a guy who can't feel anything, like,
Right.
you know, and he ends up
Physically, not
physically,
metaphorically.
right, not metaphorically. And he ends up kind of wrapped up in this whole bank robbery thing where he's trying to save this girl who he finally is kind of like connected with and really likes. And it's a fun action movie, so especially considering that he's not really an action star.
Yeah.
I would not call him that.
No.
No offense to him by any means. But they use the gag pretty well of not being able to feel.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes it a bit of a lot of fun.
I was wondering if it was going to feel like it's happening in the world of the boys. Like he took some of that shot and now he can't feel pain.
I mean, a little bit like that. He, you know, I could see that character kind of coming through a little bit. Huey, Huey kind of coming through a little bit, just in the way that he carries himself and kind of how he's a little bit, you know, kind of shy and, you know, kind of derpy. So yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I think that's kind of where it stops.
Yeah.
I think beyond that, it's almost more just it feels in many ways kind of like maybe like a little bit of like a John Wick in that regard. Then I finally got to watch Mickey 17.
Oh yes.
Which, you know, I'm a huge Bong Joon-ho fan.
As am I.
So like I was super pumped to finally get to watch Mickey 17. And that was good. It definitely, I mean, it wasn't Parasite, but what is, you know, I mean, what is,
Sure.
and, you know, kind of more of his more recent work, that, or Okja, which I recently revisited that, and I actually enjoyed that even more on a second viewing. But Mickey 17's fun. It's got some very similar, I would say, performances, like to Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo's character,
Right.
kind of, and Toni Collette, like both of them kind of feel a bit like characters that were also in Snowpiercer.
Yeah, they could exist in that world.
Yeah, but Pattinson, I gotta give the guy credit, man. Like, he is a guy that just has, wanted to just leave that whole Twilight era of his life
Yeah.
behind and just picks interesting movie after interesting movie after interesting movie. And you gotta give him credit for, really moving beyond that. Just not writing that for his entire career, reinventing himself,
so I
as
was
it
gonna
were.
say.
Yeah. So it's definitely worth checking out, though, especially since I know you're a big John
Yes, I
Bong
plan
Joon-ho
to. I just
fan.
haven't been able to get to it.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend that. One thing that I watched, and I know you're not a Doctor Who watcher, but we finished Doctor Who the last season with Judy Gatwa as the Doctor, and it was great. Like,
Yeah.
he's just so good
Kind of
as the
bummed he's,
Doctor.
I'm a fan of his because we loved him in the show Sex Education, but kind of bummed he's only going to have 2-season run.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
but I will say, no spoilers for anybody who hasn't maybe gotten to the end of it yet, but there is a big surprise when he does go, and it could mean some very interesting things for the next season. I will say that. So I'm not.
Sacrifice him for the sake of the next season.
It's possible, which I've heard it might be on the chopping block. This is a Wild
Sure.
West anymore with cancellations. I feel
That's
like,
true.
and even for something that's big as Doctor Who. So fingers crossed they bring it back, though, because I think they could be setting up some really big stuff. The other thing that I watched, and I think you had mentioned you had watched it too, was Captain America: Brave New World.
Yes, I did see Cap 4.
Which was it was funny because we didn't watch that till after we had watched Thunderbolts, which
Yeah,
is
it was
not
the first
something
time
we
I've
normally do.
Yeah, first time I've ever seen a Marvel property not sequentially.
Yeah. And maybe it was because I enjoyed Thunderbolts so much, but Brave New World was fine.
It's a movie.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't
Yeah.
great, but it wasn't bad either. It was just kind of exists. Yeah.
Yeah, a little middling.
Yeah.
It's kind of the pitfalls that Marvel has seemed to get themselves into every other movie or every other show now, where it's just there, like they're checking the boxes and they're putting them out, but it's not really doing anything. We talked so praisingly about Thunderbolts, and I still feel that way. I feel that way even more after watching Cap 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of feels like they were rehashing ground they already accomplished in the Captain America and the Winter Soldier TV show.
Right.
For Cap. Like, I felt like his arc was kind of the same. Like,
Yeah.
all right, we accept you. Come on. But so, in some ways I also feel like it feels so like Hulk orientated, like those
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
Maybe this would have been a better, in a way, Incredible Hulk sequel instead of a Cap sequel.
And that's fair. It kind of maybe felt a little unfair to Anthony Mackie.
Yeah.
Like, who is trying. I mean, he's swinging for the fences. I mean, I got to hand it
sure.
to him. Like, he is doing everything he can with this character that he's been handed. And you're right. It kind of feels like they were like, well, this is actually Mark Ruffalo's sequel, or Edward Norton's sequel. In all honesty, but we're not. They're not. He's not in this movie, so you gotta take care of that for him. And it's like, well, can't I just kind of have my own movie?
Yeah, my own thing.
Right. But I will say, one thing that I don't know if I was really completely behind, and that was I mean, obviously they had to recast the crap. Why is my mind going blank?
Ross,
Thaddeus
Thunderbolt
Ross.
Ross.
Yeah, Thaddeus Ross. That character. But I don't know if Harrison Ford was the right guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he is either.
And I love Harrison Ford. Don't get me wrong, but William Hurt. I mean, I see William Hurt, but the age difference too. Like, do people realize how old Harrison Ford is?
He is old.
I mean, no offense to Harrison Ford, but the man is 82 years old. And I don't know. I felt like that age jump kind of made that character feel weird.
Yeah, you really missed out on something, because like it being William Hurt, like it would have been a connection. Like, I think the movie would have felt, it just would have felt better.
Yeah.
We're seeing like adjusting to, you're not really, a lot of the audience is just adjusting to, Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America, but then you're also now adjusting to this character as the new Thunderbolt Ross, and just kind of feels a little disheveled.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. But besides that, what else have you been watching?
Really, I'm kind of in the middle of a lot of things, so I'm at the
always.
bottom of my list of things to talk about. But I did finish Big Mouth season 8.
Oh, okay.
That's the final season of the show.
Season 8?
Yes.
Oh my God, I
Yep.
did not realize that show had been on for that long.
It has. It's been great. Still was great. The final episode was kind of like, it's fine, like, as for as finals go, but
Yeah.
it is an animated show, but I just really appreciate what the show tackles. Like, it tackles everything. Like the show basically is trying to be in like the most funny, raunchiest way, sex education for kids because they've ripped it out of so many schools.
Right.
So in a way, it's kind of serving as that and letting people feel accepted no matter how weird or different they are from their friends.
Well,
And
that's good.
it's just like I think it's just brilliant this kind of balance they have between raunchy comedy and like still getting like still saying something. It's actually
Sure.
like it's kind of one of those sneaky movies where like or sneaky TV shows, I guess in this case, where it's like they're hiding a message behind like raunchy, like obscene jokes that so maybe some people aren't going to get to expose themselves to because they're going to feel like it's too out there.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. Like I would recommend middle schoolers watch it. It's crazy. It's going to teach you some bad stuff, but it's going to kind of I think there's more good than bad there in what it's going to teach you.
Fair enough.
All right, Robert, well, let's really wrap up this episode for A Walk in the Woods. We've done our part, but before the audience can trail off, they need to make sure they do some tasks. We would like you guys, if you haven't done it already, to like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and review the podcast. If you leave us a 5-star review, we're going to read it live on air someday. Email us at carrayrob@gmail.com. Ask us anything you want about movies. We'll answer it correctly. And feel free to reach out to us on Blue Sky.
Absolutely. And you know what else would be really helpful? If they would share the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one. We really want to grow our audience, really want to grow this community, and that would be extremely helpful. Also, if there is a comment section that you are on whatever platform you are listening to us, by all means, leave us a comment. Did you think A Walk in the Woods was a good movie? Did you not? We want to find out. We also want to find out if you have any recommendations for Ray and I. We are always looking for a great new movie to watch. We will be back next week with this month's Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where we will be revisiting the Rodney Dangerfield comedy Ladybugs.
Can't wait to get Rodney Dangerfield on the podcast.
I know, and this has been a long time for me to watch this movie, so I am very interested, especially with certain elements of it, to see how
it plays out, how the jokes age.
Exactly. But then, you know what? This is a rare month where we have 5 Mondays.
Oh my God, we got to fill a 5th Monday?
We have to fill a 5th Monday, and you know what that means? That means a very special Kids Edition episode of Say Hello to My Little Film, and we will be bringing back Mr. Kitty Kaiju himself, and we will be watching a movie that even Ray hasn't seen.
It's true.
We have decided to watch The Last Starfighter.
I've only seen the second to last Starfighter, but not the last one.
Not the last one, exactly. And you know what? The last one is the best one, in my opinion. So that is going to be a really interesting episode, and you are not going to want to miss it. But until then, this is Car RayRob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab